Hello, and welcome to the mentorDINO YouTube channel. I'm your host, Caitlin Rossier. I am an architect and founder of mentorDINO. Each week, I interview amazing professionals in and around the architecture, engineering, and construction industry to help foster learning, growth, and inspiration in others. Thank you all to our current subscribers, and if you're new, we'd love to have you join our community. So hit subscribe. It really does help others be able to discover this resource. So let's dive in. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome everybody back to the mentorDINO YouTube channel. I'd like to welcome Gloria Kloter, architect, owner, and CEO of Glow Architects in Tampa, Florida. So thank you, Gloria, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, so before we get started, I know I gave you a very short intro, but you are so busy doing so many different things down in Florida with the AIA and other different organizations. Would you mind introducing yourself and just everything you're doing and involved in? I don't want to miss out anything.
Oh no, we're gonna spend the whole interview.
Okay, half an hour, just introduction.
Okay, a little summary. So, I am, as you said, I'm originally from the Dominican Republic, but I live in Tampa, and I own my business, Glow Architects, here in Tampa. But I am part of the AIA Tampa Bay, part of the board of directors. I'm the current treasurer, but I've been serving with them since 2018 in different positions. I also serve NCARB and AIA Florida as the licensing advisor for the state of Florida. I am the founder and mentor for Foreign Architects. That's like an online community that I founded to help immigrants in this process of getting licensed here. And I've served in different areas like architecture and education, Architina, and others where I kind of either go and teach about architecture to little kids that are like 4 or 5 graders. Architina is an organization that is for women architects from Latin America that are trying to get their license here. I'm also part of the Immigrant Architect Coalition with Graciela Carrillo. Like I'm co-author of the book they just came out with, and just part of what they're doing. We kind of give presentations at conferences and things like that. So that's kind of, I will say that's kind of like more of the summary of what I'm doing right now.
We'll start to unpackage everything during our conversation today. So let's first start with Glow Architects. How did that start? And it looks like you partnered with your husband, who's not an architect or engineer. So how did that start?
So what happened was, I used to have a business back in the Dominican Republic. As soon as I got my license, I was up and running because I had to work while I was in school back in the Dominican Republic because I didn't get to get a loan to pay for my school. It's really not that of a scene back there to get a loan for going to college. So I had to pretty much work. And what happened was I got out of it and I had enough experience because I was working for years in this architectural firm, and that had it was mixed with engineers too. So I have a lot of access to information and really learning from everybody there. And then I got an opportunity to do this project that was not related to what we were doing in that office. And my boss said, we won't take that, but if you want to do it on your own time. And that opened a door for me to say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do it because I wanted to do it. But that business or project, better said, brought me more business and more business. At some point, I had to just quit and just kind of do my own scene because I was making more money out on my own than what I was doing in my job. So when I came to the United States, I thought I was going to be able to just bring my business here because I met my husband in 2013, and he was in the middle of saying that he wanted to change careers because he used to be a Marine. That's how we met overseas.
Okay.
So I said, okay, don't worry, baby. Like, if you want to change careers, I will support you. Like, I can take care of, bring my business to the States, keep working as an architect, and you can figure like what you want to do, how you want to do it in, the first year or two. But that's not what happened, because as you know, architect licenses are a different story.
Yeah,
I couldn't.
doesn't always transfer easily. So
Yes,
that's all before you came to the States.
that's all before I came to the States. So when I came to the States and I realized I couldn't just bring my business here, I had to take a job. And that's what I'm trying to get to. When I took the job was because I needed to. I thought I was very annoyed about it, because I'm like, I have all this experience and I have my business in the DR, and now I'm not considered an architect here. And I think this is a sentiment that many foreign architects share, especially if they're very experienced from their own home country. But what I discovered in my own process was that I am actually grateful they didn't let me practice, and they forced me to get through the process here to get the license, because there was so much that I didn't know how things are done here. It's just different. I
Yeah.
didn't know much about the building codes. There was a lot of materials and systems I wasn't familiar with, because I never worked with those back in the DR. So I taking this job really gave me an opportunity to experience those and like real life experience. And then I was taking the exams, which also helped me to kind of understand some of the things that sometimes you don't even see in your regular everyday practice. As that was happening, I spent about 4 years in that company. And then in 2019, when I got my license, I said, I had really deep inside of me, I wanted to have my business. But I will tell you, I really got afraid. I feel like sometimes when you don't know what you don't know, you might not feel afraid of anything, because you think everything is going to be fine. That, I think, was my attitude when I arrived here in 2015. But by 2019, when I realized how contracts work here and the amount of liability that you carry when you have a license, it made me feel afraid. So I think I wanted to have the business, but I was afraid of it because of what it means here. And I was kind of, to a certain level, comfortable with having a salary and the coverage with the insurance and all that kind of stuff where I was at. But as I got pregnant in 2019, end of 2019, things changed rapidly early 2020 because of the pandemic, and then all the plans we had on what we were going to do with our family were just kind of thrown in the
Yeah.
toilet, because I couldn't get my daughter registered into a daycare. Like, I don't know if you're a mom. Are you a mom? Do you have kids?
I am not.
No.
But I have a lot of friends who are young moms, and seeing them trying to find daycare, like I'm up in Pittsburgh,
It's a
Pennsylvania,
nightmare.
and you gotta have like your kid in daycare like when you know you're pregnant.
Yeah.
Like the wait time is like 9 months, 10 months. I'm like, 10 months.
Yeah.
You don't even know you're pregnant. You may not
Yeah.
even be pregnant yet.
Yeah. And like,
But
you know what? This is something that was new to me. Not only as a new mom, but just like, this is one of the things that might be common in the States that just I just wasn't familiar with. And we started trying to look for something, and then everything was closed. They were not taking new kids. Like, either they were not taking new kids, or they were just like, we're actually trying to reduce because of the pandemic. Like, we can have this many kids. Like, it was just crazy. So long story short, I delivered my baby June 2020. Some areas were starting to open up a little bit here in
mhm.
Florida. Like, Florida was like one of the states that were like a little bit like more rebel than
Yeah.
others.
Like let's go open and get
Yeah,
going.
let's just have like spring break here. And 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 what happened was my company was kind of like going back like in person again
Hmm.
rapidly, because we were considered essential business and all that kind of stuff. And when I was about to finish my 3 months of maternity leave, I was trying to negotiate with them going back either partially in person or like completely remotely. Because again, I have a baby at home that it was supposed to be in a daycare, and she wasn't.
Yeah.
I had no list, no place to take her.
And
Uh,
even the daycares up here, like they are very quick to shut down, send people home. I remember pre-pandemic, my mom friends would just like, okay, I'm going to give you as much medicine as possible and see how long through the day I can get. Whereas now it's like, oh my God, somebody coughs. and they're like, you got to come pick up your kid right now.
Yeah.
And or they get locked down because of COVID, even still today. So
Yeah.
it's not as consistent as it used to be pre-COVID.
Yeah. And so what happened is I'm trying to negotiate these with them because this is my situation now that a lot of people were also experiencing. And they said, no, we need you to come in person full time, because what was happening was a lot of people actually either quit, some people were let go in like a different office, and the office I was working for, we were down to like very little people for some reason, and my boss needed to travel for 2 weeks, I think for personal reasons, to see his family or something, and they kind of wanted me to go back in person for this so he could go. um, and I was the only registered architect besides him in the office at the moment. So I was like, okay, so what am I supposed to do with this baby? And I
Yeah.
remember I talked to my husband and he said, well, maybe this is the push that you needed. Like, why don't you just quit? This is your chance to quit and just try it and open your business. You already have your license. You've worked with them for 4 years. You have the experience from the DR, so like you can merge that experience and see how it goes. And I know it is crazy. It's a pandemic. You just had a baby, but like what's the worst that can happen? And that is a question that I ask myself, um, based on a conference that I went in 2019, actually, with a young architect, the young architect conference that was in Portland,
Mm-hmm.
Oregon, with Michael Risica. One of the keynote speakers was talking about, like when you are in front of an opportunity and you're afraid of it, like ask yourself what's the worst that can happen. And if you can handle that answer, maybe you can go for it. And I get goosebumps to
Yeah.
think about it because it makes an impact when she said that. And that's what I did in that moment. I said, what's the worst that can happen? And I said, okay, well, I either uh can I find, business and I have to go back and get a job, or like I do something really wrong and I get sued and I have to deal with all that liability scene. But like after a little bit of getting more experience, like, you know getting a lawsuit might not be the end of the world, because most of the time if you have a good insurance, they cannot limit things to that. And like it's not like as terrifying as you think. And like, yes, there's a lot of liability, but you're gonna try to do your work right, and like, kind of like talk about issues if they arise, and not having to get to litigation if you can avoid it, right? So like there's steps before that, and I'm like, well, maybe I can try this. Let's see. Like my answer was probably the worst that can happen is that I have to close the business and go back to being an employee. And I've been doing that for 40 years here. It wasn't that bad. So
Yeah.
I will survive if that happens, right? So I said, okay, let's do it. And that's how it started. The whole name is a different story because my people used to call me Glow in college. And I actually hired a company to help me find a name for the company because I wasn't sure. But I was focused on the Kloter last name, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like anything. For some reason, I didn't like how it sounded.
Well, then you'd have the argument on, the pronunciation.
I don't know. And then I remember that one of the creators that were helping me with finding the name and the logo, they said like, can you give me a description of what you do, why you're passionate about it, and da da da. And there was something I said in that description. There was this little sentence that I said, I feel, and this was actually based on something that I read in the Bible that was about like us being the light of the world. And I said, I feel that I am that for my clients. Like I enlighten their vision because I always offer, part of my package is always a lot of renders. And I try to do that because my very first job that I got, that one I mentioned before, that
Yeah.
my boss didn't want, was the Steve Madden, and I always expose that in any presentation that I have about how I started. It's a Steve Madden retail store I did back in the DR. It was the first one they were bringing to the country, And when they hired me to just do the renders of a design that was already made by an architect in Venezuela, and build it, because you can kind of do that in the DR, like a certain level of or sizes of projects you can be like the general contractor. So I was
Hmm.
hired to do that, but when I did the renders of the design that was sent, they didn't like it. They were like, "Oh, I didn't think this is what was going to be." And I'm like, "Yeah, these are the colors,
Yep.
this is how it's going to look like." And they were like, "No, we can't do that." And they had 2 weeks to start building, and they're like, "Can you give us a new design?" And I wasn't able to sleep for 2 weeks, because I was like, "Oh yes, now I can say the design is
Yeah.
mine." But it was 2 weeks. And my point is, it really made me understand how important it was to show that visual to the clients. And so after that, I included that in my package. Like, I always show either interior renders or exterior renders to kind of, so I said, I feel that I enlighten their vision so they can really see how it's going to look like before we get into construction. And they said, "Oh, but like Glow, like Gloria, like how do you feel about that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that was my nickname when I was in college." And they were like, "Oh, Glow Architects." And that's,
It works.
yeah, it works. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it was born.
Well, I do appreciate that it's not just initials or a name. I know when I had to rebrand, I was doing blogging for a number of years. And when I changed it into a business, I couldn't have the word architect in it because I don't provide architecture services. And I
Mm.
was, down pencil and paper and bugging people. Like, coming up with a name is so hard. So I now understand why so many firms tend to just go with the names of the company or the owners because it tends to be more unique and nobody has it. So
Mhm.
that's what I also love about Glow is it's not anybody's name
Oh, I love the
necessarily.
logo too. I just love the logo. Have you noticed in my website how like they all glows?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? I did that myself. Now I'm like, I wish I could like have that in like a business card or something that will like actually do it. But like,
Glow and move.
yeah, yeah.
Well, they do have the new Adobe dress that they created that has movement to it. So maybe you put your logo on a dress and you could have it glow and move.
Yes,
So,
I will explore that idea.
and so Glow is yourself, your husband. Who else is on staff with you guys?
So, okay, so you did ask, and I forgot that part, like how it ended up being with my husband too. So, the reason why I involved him is because I am really good, even back in the DR, I had a business too, but I'm really good, I feel, with like all the architectural part, the design part, managing clients and things like that. But I don't feel like I am as good in admin
Mm-hmm.
specific stuff, like anything that is paperwork, spreadsheets, and even contracts. I struggle a little bit with it. I do review it very well, and I sit with him anytime we're gonna send a proposal out to double check that there's any wordings or whatever. But I feel that he is really good for, like, he just have a brain that was born for business. Like, he has several businesses himself. He just loved like the kind of the side of that admin part and kind of finding ways to make things more efficient and whatever. And I was struggling on my side initially with my business here, especially in the States more than even in the DR. Because in the DR, my mom is a CPA, so she helped me with
Okay.
part of that side of things. I always like to have someone to be the one collecting the money versus doing it myself. And the only reason why it is because I feel like it's nice having a separation, like good cop, bad cop scenario.
Yeah. Haven't paid me yet. Come on. But here's
Yeah,
some more renderings that you called for.
yes. And I like to be the good cop and then having someone to be the bad cop in that sense. So with my mom, she was always the one collecting the money and helping me keep like our books straight. But with Jeremy, he has helped me in that matter, and he's like I said, Jeremy's the money man. He likes to get paid. If it was for me, I probably would be working for free because I struggle with like collecting money. So that was part of the reason why I was struggling with that part. And I said, I need help. And we talk about it. He was like, well, I could give you this amount of hours, like, will that work? And I'm like, yes. And like, we kind of made it work. Besides him, I have two other team members that are like in a part of our like regular basis. One, I've worked with him for a long time. They're both fully remotely, because I do have an office space. I'm talking to you from my home right now, because since I have my second baby, I work more from home than from the office. But I have my space that if I want to like just be there and focus, I can go. But I don't have enough space to have like people in person. That's one thing. The other thing too is like I've been working, for example, Luis, which he helps me with anything graphics, anything renderings and like presentations and all that kind of stuff. Luis is the man. And there's some other stuff that he gets involved too, but he's like mainly on like that graphic part because he's fast. I've been working for him for many years. And then I have this other person that she I used to actually work with her before too, and like before opening Glow, and she had to move back to her home country for personal reasons. And when she was there, she opened all of her experience was actually from here in the States. And she told me about it, trying to look for opportunities for me to refer her to other companies because she was like looking for jobs because she's like, everything I know, like she studied here, she worked here, and she's like, everything I know is from the States. And now I'm struggling here because like, even like most of other countries work in meters and here is like
Yeah.
inches. So she went back there and it's like it's no longer that. And I was like, you know what, you could actually help me because I was working with another girl here that was getting really busy because she got like another job and she was like having like part-time job with me. And I feel like she was starting to get like way too busy with this other company too. And I was like, maybe I can try it with you and see how it works. And since I started working with her, it's like she has been like the best addition to us because she's a very fast learner. I've really taken upon myself to like mentor her with certain things because she's taking the exams or preparing herself for the exams and like kind of there's things that she wasn't familiar with, like building codes and stuff. So we've been really taking all of the projects I'm working with and taking, like in a weekly basis, like 1 or 2 hours to just like meet online and kind of walk her through stuff. And like the last actually three projects that we got, I said, okay, you know what? You're going to do the life safety plans and I'm just going to review them and kind of let you run with it and see how you do because it's the best opportunity for her to kind of just like actually force her to like fully do it first and then I just give her feedback. So in total we are um, four people in my company.
And that kind of goes back to when you transitioned from the Dominican Republic and getting used to different areas and codes. So it's kind
Yes.
of the reverse happening for her leaving the
Yes.
States.
Yes.
Now, I want to backtrack a little bit. How was your licensure process coming over from the Dominican Republic? I know I've heard stories of other foreign architects that try to transfer education and it doesn't transfer well, and then they just end up going back for their master's degree so they can sit for the exams. How was it coming from the Dominican Republic for you?
So I think there is a lot of misconception in that part because a lot of people and there's nothing wrong if you really want to go back to school. Like I know, for example, one person I can mention is Graciela. Her story, she felt she wanted to, she felt she needed to just kind of take that extra master because it gave her confidence, and she felt she needed it. But I think a lot of people um go that route because they think it's required. And the
Mm-hmm.
difference, the reason why I point out Graciela's story is because I think she knew she didn't needed it, but she kind of personally wanted to do that. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? But I think most of the time is the lack of understanding on what is really needed in that process. This happened to me in my own process because I started with what we call the standard path for immigrants, which is like you get your your education evaluated with an ESA through NAB. And then when that's approved, then you start like you report all your hours of experience that are required, either partly international or not. And then you take the exams. It's like those first the the three steps, pretty much the
Yeah.
basic three steps, right? Education, experience, and exams. But I, as a foreign architect who had hold a license in a foreign country, I could have opted for the foreign architect path, which is different, it's shorter, it's faster. I don't have to get my education evaluated and all that kind of stuff. And what happened was I started in the standard pass first, and I made a lot of mistakes with that because translating all the paperwork for evaluating your education was like super long, expensive, and all that kind of stuff. Like I got quotes, and like the cheapest quotes for translated the book for the ESA was like almost $10,000. Actually, I think a
Wow.
little over $10,000. And the problem with that is it's not just your transcripts that they evaluate. Every class that you take, it has like this description and objective and all that. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages sometimes of like a same program.
Yeah.
That's what they want for every class. So if your bachelor's and master's were like super long like mine, I had like 400, 500 pages to transcribe. Just think about
Yeah.
that craziness. Collecting them, because like most of the time these schools don't have all the paperwork like together and like ready for you to submit, and then it's not translated, and it's just mess. So then after I was about to register for a college, because what happened was I got my EASE evaluation back with a deficiency of six. It was 6 credits, 3 credits for English, which I could just take an exam, comprehension exam or something,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 credits for codes and regulations. But they told me to take the codes and regulations as a master degree class because I was trying to um, accredit my master's too, not just the bachelor's. So
Yeah.
that 3 credits needed to be a master's. So just that class for one semester was like over $3,000. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, and I'm thinking of the money and the time, like you have to go back to school and, take exams and all. I don't know.
Yeah.
When I was given the opportunity of taking the foreign architect path, and they were like, you don't need the ESA for that. I'm like, you know what? I don't care that I already spent this part of the money. I just don't want to have to go back to school and paying $3,000 more. Like I was just done. And I just switched, and then like they sent 2 forms to one to my board of architecture in the DR, and one to my college. And then when those forms were back to them, I was approved. And then I reported my hours. I completed the hours that are required to be under an architect in the States, which is halfway
Mm-hmm.
there, and the other halfway I reported from the DR. And as I was in this job that I worked for years, I kind of completed those hours as I was taking the exams, and that was it. But it was really a rocky process because of the lack of knowledge. And I want to clarify, a lot of people say like nobody knows anything, nobody tells you anything. To be honest, all of the information is out there. The problem that I feel that there is like a gap between sometimes between NCARB and NAP and some of the boards of
Mm-hmm.
architecture on different states, like the New York state is pretty kind of hard to deal with sometimes. New Jersey is pretty complicated for some people too, and I'm talking complicated for foreign architects especially.
Yeah.
It's because sometimes the way things are written doesn't translate to us. And the
Mm-hmm.
best example I can give you is like the reason why I started in the standard path instead of the foreign architect path was in the my NCARB record, there is a tab that everybody has that says registrations. And I didn't know what that was. Like registration to what? To like an event? Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna register for an event? Like I didn't understand what that was. I didn't understand that that meant a license. And I never put that I had a license in the Dominican Republic because I didn't understand that that's what they were asking for. Now, when I was on the phone talking to somebody, I went out talking to this NCARB customer service representative, and I said, and I have my license in there. And she's like, I don't see that in your record. Why don't you put it? I'm like, I don't know where to put it. And she's like, in the registration tab. That's what registration means. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that's what it meant. And I found that a lot of immigrant architects and immigrant professionals, emerging professionals, experience the same. They don't know that registration means license, and they don't put it there because they didn't know, and they waste a lot of time going through other path versus the foreign architect path, which will apply to them if they hold that license. So my point is, it was just kind of like rocky. Like, I started the process end of 2015, kind of like trying to start like gathering information. Really formally, I started early 2016, and I got my license 2019, because I started taking the exam. It took me about a year and 8 months taking all of the exams and passed them. But like the first initial time of like figuring things out and translating and all that, it was just like so confusing for me. And I know one of the questions that you probably want to address is like how the foreign architect group that I started. And this is the reason why. It's because I was so frustrated with my own process and all the money and all the
All the
time that I,
time. Yeah.
yes, it's money. Time is money and money is money, and I wasted both. So just like think about the repercussions on like my personal, family time and other things I wanted to do. So that's why I started that group, because I'm like, I'm tired of like not having kind of like, for people like me, enough guidance. And again, like, I might not know the specific answer to a specific case, but I'm hoping that in that group someone else can chime in and help too.
Yeah, definitely. Because I more know the standard process, and like even people in the States understanding you need to go to a university that is accredited is
Mhm.
hard for people to even realize you need to do that. So even people in the States don't get an approved education, and then they just give up on their licensure path
Mhm.
altogether because they find that's the only one, and they don't want to go back to school because it's a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
But
And
the
I and this is funny that you mentioned that, because this is one of the things that happened to me when I came in 2015. I met a person, and I mentioned this actually in my book, where someone told me in the very beginning of my process, someone told me, oh, don't even try to get your license. Like, your education and your experience here is like worth nothing. And like, I know so many people that even went to school here and have never gotten their license. Like, don't even try, like, you're not gonna get it. And I remember coming back home like heartbroken, sorry, and just kind of
Mhm.
like crying and feeling like so defeated. I'm like, man, I fell in love with this guy, and we decided coming to the States thinking I was just gonna transfer my business here. And like, now it's like I cannot even call myself an architect. I'm not gonna be able to get the license. Like, can I even practice architectural law? Like, what am I gonna end up working in something else, like in a restaurant or something, because of this personal life decision I made? Nothing wrong with working in a restaurant, but it's not what I wanted,
Yeah,
you know?
especially when you owned your own practice down in the
Yes.
Dominican Republic and then coming over, it's taking a back step and then
Yeah.
resetting, and that takes time.
Yeah. And my point is, the same way, the reason why I mentioned this story is because the same way that happened to me, it happens to a lot of people. Because one of the things that most of immigrant architects experience is that they come to the States and there's no one else around them, no friends or family that work in architecture that can guide them through the correct process. So it takes a little bit for most of them to actually figure things out, because most of the time nobody around you knows anything about this one career.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for firm owners that may be hiring their first foreign architect and they may not know the process? Do you have any advice for firm owners?
I think the main thing is paying attention to their strength in the matters of like uh, graphic architectural design itself, and then helping them on. I feel the things that sometimes we need help the most is like building codes, research, understanding zoning codes, how that works here. And then I think sometimes trying to expose them to certain opportunities, I will call, where they can develop certain skills in the States. Like, for example, let them handle meetings in front of you. because they might have been really good back in their home country, but it's very different when you're doing it in a second language. And this is a good example to take. When I was back in the DR, I was a professor in an art school, and I was teaching architectural design, I was teaching architectural drafting, and I love talking in front of people. I was very confident. It was just like I don't know, it was like my home. I usually was handling between like 20 to 30 students at a time. And this is all on the side of my architectural practice, right? Then I
Yeah.
come to the States, and when I was in this previous job, I felt very terrified to be in front of clients, especially because one, it felt like it was their clients, not mine. Some
Hmm.
makes sense. It's like, oh, I'm gonna do something wrong, they're gonna fire me
Well,
because
especially you coming owning your own firm, I completely understand that because before that was like that was your first baby was
yes,
that firm, and then when you're going working for somebody else, it doesn't feel as much your own. So
yes.
definitely understand that.
And then like that's a good point that you bring up. It's like the I didn't feel that ownership with certain things because there was always someone else being the first contact of that client, and then I was handle the client, but I didn't. It never felt like, oh, this is a contact I made, and I'm bringing this one client to the house, and it's like my client, and I nurture this client the way I see fit because based on my personality is the reason why they actually came to the company. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when I have a business now, this is how it happens, but that's not how it was happening when I was in that other job that I had. And I feel that that will have been really great for me. Like if I will have been exposed more to like presentations, which they did at the end. But I think like I spent 4 years where I could have been doing that like from year one, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing because it will help you to like lose that fear of like public speaking, and kind of master. Like the more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah.
Um,
All about
and
practice.
Yes, and I think besides that is the part of like understanding that some immigrants can feel very lonely in the they might have family and friends with them, they might not. Like all my immediate family is back in the DR, my mom, my dad, my sister, brothers, and all that. I have family in the States, but like they live like in New York or like other states. So it's not that they're like right here. So like my family now is my husband's family. Like his mom and his dad are like my mom and my dad now, and not everybody has that. I'm very lucky and
Hmm.
very blessed to have that in my life, but like a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people may have even a bad relationship with their spouses families, which is not my case. But like my point is, if you have an immigrant architect in your company, like think about that extra step of like how can you make them feel welcome, how can you um, help to for them to feel like part of the team, and kind of like find out if like for holidays they have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
You know
Because
what I'm
every
saying? Like they might not have a place to be on Thanksgiving. I don't know, like it's just things to think about.
Yeah, definitely. I know my husband's company brought in an Italian expat and he didn't bring over his whole family right away. So we were checking on holidays, even if it wasn't an Italian holiday. But if everybody was off, we always just checked, hey, are you going somewhere? Were you invited? And he was generally invited to places, but we'd always fill the gaps. So nobody was left alone, especially if
Yeah,
everywhere else is closed. It's like you can't really go
especially because
out.
those days is when like it really hits you. You
Yeah.
know?
And then you miss home, miss your family
Yeah,
and stuff like
yeah.
that. So what's something with the Foreign Architects Facebook group is something you've learned after opening that group?
Oh, I've learned how much I don't know. It is like the more I know, the more I realize of how much I don't know. It's just like the beauty of this group is that we don't have just people from like one region. It's
Hmm.
like we have people from literally all over the world. It's just like it's so broad. It's over 2,500 members right now. It's actually pretty active. Group It's a pretty active group because people, they are constantly asking questions, trying to find mentorship, trying to understand how to do this or that step. But I think one of the things I've learned the most um is that there's just like a lot of complexity for any individual case. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of challenges that people face that sometimes are not even related to the United States. Sometimes it's related to the specific school they went in their home country that may not apply to someone else from that same country, but that went to a different school or that might live in a different region. Like, I know people that are from Brazil and they can be from different cities in Brazil that went to different schools in Brazil. So everything can be just so different for everybody. And like the way those easy evaluations come back can be, some people are like me that get like 6 credits because most of the time people get English. I don't know why. Like, I guess like if it's not shown in your
If it's not shown properly, then it
like
like,
if it doesn't says that you took some credits of English in your gosh, your transcripts is what I'm trying to say. Um, then they will include it. But then there's people that besides that will have like, and codes and regulations is obviously to another one because it's like codes are so different here.
yeah.
But then there's people that will have like 20 something credits, 30 credits, and it's like they really need to go back to school because of like so many credits are left out. And one thing, this is maybe a better way to give you like a straight answer to that question. One thing that I've learned is that sometimes translation is key,
Hmm.
because some people that have gone to similar or same schools can come with very different ISA evaluation deficiencies in their
Hmm.
whole scene. And it's because I think like the translator didn't use the correct words to kind of like help the evaluator understand that this one class actually can be accredited for this one requirement. And the candidate can be kind of a little bit like low on credits because of that, which
Hmm.
to me sometimes comes down to, was the translation good? But like, what can you do about that? Like, you don't control that because the candidate cannot even touch those documents. Those are sent to the translator, and the translator send it directly to NAP or NCARB. So
Yeah. Or if the translator doesn't have like an architecture design background, because even just talking to people that aren't in our industry, we have a very different language
mm,
and that translates to school. But if you're not used to it, it's a whole nother language barrier.
yeah, like people can translate, like when you're talking about projects, they might say job or something when you're like really trying to talk about projects or the
Hmm.
works or something like that, and just it doesn't translate well. So that's something that I've learned, is like how this can affect people.
Yeah. And I know I've joined the Foreign Architects Facebook group. I am not a foreign architect, but I am there just to watch and learn and see what other people's stories are, any struggles, and just learn about that process. Because again, it was nothing I had to deal with. And so I want to be able to help people going through the process themselves. So it's really nice to hear what you've gone through.
Well, and then as you said, like if you get people asking you, like this is one way to for you to kind of, I guess, educate yourself on like what's going on, or having at least a resource to go out and ask if someone
Yep.
may not even be in Facebook. There's like elderly people that don't even have social media at all, like not Facebook, like no social media because
Yeah.
they don't like it, and that's fine. But then if they come to you, then you can be that bridge between that
Exactly.
situation. And yeah, so
Yeah, so I think it's an awesome spot. So if anybody has questions and doesn't have Facebook, you can find us and we will ask the question for you to
yeah,
anything. Um, I know we're going to be running low on time. So I wanted,
I talk too much, sorry.
oh no, I want to make sure you get back to your day. I know we're both swamped with things, but do you have any advice for young professionals starting their career, whether it's a foreign architect, just any young professional, or starting your own business or starting a family? There's so many different avenues that you've taken in your career. Do you have any advice that you typically give somebody on any of those paths?
If I can give you one that applies to everybody, right?
Hmm.
One advice that applies to everybody on those different branches that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think it will be the part of like, I like telling people to say yes to things. I really like that advice. I think a lot of us tend to feel that we need to check all the boxes to be qualified to take on certain scenes. And I feel that that hasn't been my story and my journey in general. Most of the time, I've said yes to scenes when I know I have a lot to learn from that yet, but I've learned to really rely on people around me that can mentor me, help me along the way. And I think as you take scenes, it also like force you and help you to um, kind of dig into scenes that maybe you didn't before, and then you become like this little expert in this or that. I think saying yes, especially to help others, help a lot too, because when you're helping, mentoring, it kind of also force you to like having to go back and kind of read about stuff that you might not know, or even, or like maybe you knew and you don't remember anymore because you haven't seen in a while. So I think just putting yourself in a position of like being a little bit uncomfortable usually helps. And the reason why I say this is because in like back in the DR, when I took that one Steve Madden project, I never had any experience with retail stores before at all. Like it just, it was a tenant improvement
Hmm.
project, but it was big for me, for someone who was never worked on her own before, had no experience with these type of projects, and I still said yes. And I said yes to build it first, remember, and then I said yes to design it in 2 weeks. And then they accepted the design and we finished the design on time. We finished, not the design, sorry, um, the construction on time before the mall was open, because we were going to get penalized per day that we were
Hmm.
not open after the big opening. So we finished before the opening. And then the store, my design was featured in a really huge architectural magazine called Architecto, which is why I got the other business. But if I wouldn't have said yes from the beginning, because this is not something I do, I already have a job. There's like, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And like right now, one example that I can tell is I'm working. One of the things that Glow Architects is focused on is actually religious buildings, and we didn't start like that. I started with like more of commercial, a lot of projects related to corporate offices and things like that, headquarters, and then a lot of residential, like high-end residentials. Like I have a couple of clients that have given me really nice big houses, and I have a couple that were like more investor friendly, but like I have one particular project that I love that is almost complete on construction now. Was this house that, and this same client, I've had three other projects with him. And this one house is like a 3-story, has like two kitchens, elevator inside. Is like my dream house being built that I can't afford myself. Uh,
Yep.
but I started with that, and then I was offered this church, this religion building, because I invited this one GC to bid in a different project that was an office that I was working on, and he ended up not bidding for it because he was awarded this other project that was bigger, blah blah blah. And he said, "But you know what? I really like your plans. Like they're very clean. I'm like, I would love to just work with your company because I'm very impressed with your plans." And he kept sending me little like opportunities that just
Hmm.
didn't close because like one had an issue with the lot and another had an issue with budget. And then this one landed, and it was a huge project for me. It was 45,000 square footage church, ground up building, just huge for me. And it's like I said yes. I have no experience with
Yep.
churches. I've worked in so many other type of projects like hospitals and assisted living facilities and retail stores and residential and commercial and blah blah blah, but no religion buildings. And this is like another word. Like I'm learning about theatrical lighting, acoustical matters, and all this stuff that I wasn't exposed before. But guess what? I've got two other churches, full contract, full design on those through the same client, and a third one that is like a limited scope. My point is,
Yeah.
say yes, because after you're committed, you're gonna figure it out.
Yeah. And you're always growing. I haven't hit every different type of project, so you never know when you're going to be adjusting and shifting into a new project type. It's always a fun new challenge, and see what you like, don't like, and
Yeah.
learn from it.
Yeah. And it's like there's so much, I feel like, support around us. A lot of like communities like the Entry Architect, the for women like us, the Women Architects Collective group, like a
Yep.
lot of resources online. The Foreign Architects is another one, like that we can kind of go out and chime in and say, hey, and like if you're taking the exams, there's many support groups, the ERA Facebook group from Michael Risica and others like Parents in Architecture. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've heard of
Yeah,
that.
I'm in that one too. I have said I don't have kids, but we'll be figuring that out soon.
Well,
So now
I
I'm
started.
stalking that, just seeing like, okay, what are people doing? Like I work in a firm and I have my own small business. How is that going to change? So just kind of seeing people's stories and listening in, and eventually I will probably have my own questions to put in to
Oh
those
yeah, I
groups.
actually started the Parents in Architecture group with Mandy and Brian when
Hmm.
I wasn't a parent yet, but I was planning to it, and I
Yep.
felt like I needed support. I wasn't getting it anywhere else, so we started that group, and it has been great. So
Yeah, definitely recommend it for any of the groups we've talked about today, because it's a great support network, no matter what support you need, or even if you have somebody on your team that's a young parent and just seeing how you can help or support them, that's another great opportunity to put questions in there. So,
yeah, yeah.
all right. Well, thank you so much, Gloria. I'm sure we could go on for another like 3 hours just
Oh
because we have
yes,
so much. But and I can leave any links to access below for anybody. So Gloria will pass anything on to me, and I'll try to put any other groups we talked about in quick links so you guys can have all the resources with all the different topics we talked about
yeah.
today.
And I just want to say before we finish is to as Caitlin is going to share my contact info, just always feel free to reach out. I get like a lot of people reaching out like on a daily basis. Like you're not going to bother me. I have a specific time to dedicate for like this mentoring part that I do. So don't ever think you're bothering me. And sometimes, depending on how my workload is, if it's like heavy or not, I might take a little longer to respond, but I always go back in response to like reaching out through social media or like emails is great. Just the only thing I always like to clarify is like the one platform that I suck at is LinkedIn. Like I still have so many unread messages there because I get a lot of like random reps and stuff from like even sometimes other countries, and it has floated my inbox. So, but Instagram is great and Facebook is great and email is great to reach out to me. So.
Yeah, and so we'll leave them all below, and I will not put your LinkedIn, but you can always hunt down Gloria on LinkedIn if you want.
No, you can share it too. Just
I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Check out the description below for any resources, links, and contact information we discussed. Did you like the conversation today? Is there something you'd like to know more about or a topic I should cover? Leave me a comment below, and I will see what I can do to best answer your questions. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. It does really help others be able to find this resource to have larger conversations. So leave me a comment and subscribe. I really appreciate your support.